The Texas Revolution by Gabby and Ellie. Some wars protect honor and a country's reputation, others are for revenge, but battles that took place in the Texas Revolution were to gain freedom. This war still affects people's lives today. It had many battles and many great leaders, but to understand the war, you need to know how it all started. Before Texas was a part of the United States, a newly independent country called Mexico owned it. But before Mexico became an independent country, Texas had been owned by Spain. Not only did they own Texas, but they also owned most of the Southwest. However, few Spaniards actually settled in these areas. After the U.S. continued to expand west, the Spanish allowed U.S. citizens to buy the land as long as they became loyal to Spain. The U.S. settlers arrived in Texas in 1822, only to find out Mexico had become an independent country. However, the original land agreement that was made with Spain was accepted by Mexico. Throughout the next few years, U.S. settlers continued to migrate to Texas, and Texas was beginning to be a threat to Mexico. Texas had a highly competitive economic and trade system, and by 1830, the population in Texas was higher than the population in Mexico. In an attempt to keep Texas from growing in population, Mexico passed the Decree of April 6 that declared Texas was closed to any further colonization, and all new imports of slaves were banned. This made Texans very angry, and the idea of breaking away from Mexico started to look better and better to the people of Texas. It started with a small group of people who wanted war with Mexico called war dogs. This was when the idea of Texas breaking away from Mexico started to become an option. Small mobs and uprisings occurred in East Texas in the early 1830s, but no one was ready for an all-out war with Mexico yet. In 1832, Sam Houston arrived and gathered a volunteer army for Texas. A Texas Constitutional Convention was held in 1833, and Houston drafted the state constitution. A man named Stephen Austin carried the document to Mexico City in hopes of negotiating with the Mexican president Santa Anna. He hoped to convince him to repeal the decree that banned further colonization and slavery. Since there were many farms in Texas, they felt the need to have lots of slaves to help out with the labor needs. However, when Austin met with Santa Anna, his efforts were ignored and he was sent to jail for 2 years for suggesting Texas to become a U.S. state. Within these 2 years, the war dogs had strengthened in numbers, and Santa Anna became more concerned about Texas wanting to start a war. In pursuit of scaring the Texans away from the idea of war, Santa Anna sent Mexican troops to Texas. They tried to get the city of Gonzales to surrender a cannon that was being held there. The Texans reacted quickly by gathering a small army and chasing the Mexicans southward back to Mexico. Soon afterwards, the Texans wrote a letter to President Jackson about their request to become a U.S. state, and Austin took the document to Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, a Texan army of about 300 volunteers waited out a long winter at the Alamo. They were waiting for the Mexicans to attack. Texas was ready to fight for independence. The Texan army was stationed at the Alamo Mission, which was an old abandoned church in San Antonio, Texas. The army was small and it was all volunteers, and William Travis led it. On February 23, 1836, a Mexican army of about 3,000 men arrived at the Alamo. They asked that the Texans surrender, but they did anything but that. The Mexicans attacked, and the Texan army knew their chances were grim. They were outnumbered and overpowered, although not a single one backed out or gave up hope. They fought to the death, and every Texan that fought died. It was a devastating loss for the people of Texas, but it only strengthened their hatred for Mexico. There was no backing down now. This was war. After their victory at the Alamo, the Mexicans headed toward the city of Goliad. Sam Houston warned the Texan troops that were stationed there to evacuate, for they would soon be a target. Commander Fannin led his troops out of the city only to run into the Mexican army. The Mexicans surrounded the small army and ordered them to surrender. Obviously outnumbered, the Texans agreed to surrender under the condition that they would be treated as prisoners of war and not executed. But that was nowhere near the truth. Santa Anna ordered his men to kill the Texans, claiming they were pirates who defied the Mexican law. The soldiers carried out the order, resulting in the largest single loss of Texan lives during the Revolution. 330 men died, and only 20 managed to escape. This event was later named the Goliad Massacre. The Texans had been murdered without any means of defending themselves. Yet again, this defeat only made the Texans want to fight harder. The Mexicans should have known not to mess with Texas. Santa Anna and his troops continued to move about Texas, trying to hunt down the constantly moving Texan army. Houston's method was to hide from the enemy until Santa Anna made a mistake, which would give Texas's small army an advantage. On April 21st, 1836, Houston's patience had finally paid off. He learned the Mexicans were stationed next to the San Jacinto River, and he ordered his troops to attack immediately. This took the Mexicans by surprise because of two reasons. First, a hill blocked the Mexicans' view of the Texans attacking, and second, they attacked while the Mexicans were enjoying their daily siesta or nap. The Mexicans were caught off guard and they didn't have time to prepare for battle. Most of them fled while the Texan army killed many others. This was a huge victory for Texas and it gave them hope. Maybe they could win this after all. While the Mexican army tried to fight off the Texans during the Battle of San Jacinto, Santa Anna fled but was found the next day. He was taken as prisoner and was forced to sign a document that recognized Texas as an individual state. Although Texas had broken away from Mexico, it did not become a U.S. state until December 29, 1845. Many great leaders fought in this war for Texan independence. There were people like Jim Bowie, who was born into a military family, but sadly he used his adventurous spirit to become a fighter, a drunk, and a slave marketer. However, after marrying the vice governor's daughter, he turned his life to politics, and he found himself being angry at the new laws being made. This led to Bowie becoming a ranger in the Texas Army. He was the leader of this army until he became sick with typhoid at the Alamo. The war also had people like Davy Crockett, who actually started out as a frontiersman. After failing as a farmer, mill operator, and a storekeeper, he found his calling in 1833 when he went to the Alamo. This war also brought people like William Travis, who commanded a scouting company, but he got orders to reinforce the Alamo. Once at the Alamo, when Bowie fell sick, Travis, at only age 27, went in charge. People like Sam Houston were also in this war. Houston actually managed to live to see Texas as a free state. He was even made the first president after being head of Texas Army, and after he managed to capture the enemy leader and use him to sign a peace treaty after being shot in the ankle. All of these great leaders were against General Lopez de Santa Anna, who was in charge of the Mexican army. He led the attack that killed all the brave rebels at the Alamo, and he killed his 350 prisoners later. This war happened many years ago, but it still affects us today. Without this victory, Texas wouldn't be a part of America today, obviously, but this war did something more. At a battle such as the Alamo, we were outnumbered and low on supplies, yet we fought our hearts out. We didn't win and everyone died, but it's that spirit that won Texas its freedom in the end. This story remains to be an example for today. It taught us to fight for what you believe in, and not even death can stop you if you fight hard enough.